Okay, Corey, start us off. How did you do for problem five?
For problem five, had to determine uh, the cost of the debt and the cost of the equity, um, and factor in the tax rate. So it was uh, zero point 0.7 times the cost of equity, 11.5, and then add that to zero point 0.3 times the 5.9% times 1 minus the tax rate, and got 9.2.
Okay, so we have a cost of equity and a cost of debt, and they tell us that we're doing 70% equity financing. They don't mention preferred, so we know the rest, or 30%, will be debt financed. We use the general formula, and we should come up with a required return of 9.2. So if we then, for this company, we knew what their cash flows were going to be going out, we would discount them back at that 9.2% rate, presuming the project is of equivalent risk. And yeah, it's a big thing. Okay, everybody good on that one?
What I don't really understand the theory behind what does 9.2 mean?
9.
Like, why is it important?
Because it's kind of important. Because when we take a look at projects and we are discounting by a particular rate, that 9.2 is the rate. You know, we can't just assume it should be 10% or 12%. We base that rate on our costs, and the costs that we have are the inventory and cost of goods sold, and all of those things go into our cash flow costs. This is the cost of our financing. This is why when we do our pro forma financial statements, we didn't include interest expense in there, because it's captured here by our cost of debt. These are legitimate costs. Your shareholders are expecting returns. Your bondholders are expecting returns. So those are costs to your project. How we come up with what rate we discount them at, that's what weighted average cost of capital does. It tells us the appropriate rate given how risky our company is, that our projects have to earn at least 9.2% to be positive projects. Otherwise, it's not worth pursuing.
This is the discount rate that we were just assuming in those problems earlier.
Exactly. You know, we started out we learned how to do NPV, assuming what the cash flows were. Then we learned how to do the cash flows. Then we've just always assumed we know we have a discount rate. Well, what discount rate? This is the discount rate. This is how you come up with it. And it's based on our costs, and it's very specific to the company. So each company will have a different cost of capital. Even within units, sometimes they have different costs of capital. Who works for BGE? Brian, right? Brian, you work for BGE?
Yep, that's me.
Yeah. Okay. So we have within BGE, we have a regulated division and a non-regulated division. They may have different costs of capital, but their projects have to earn the appropriate cost of capital given how risky they are. For this particular company, they have one cost of capital for their entire firm, and all projects would be positive NPV if the return is above 9.2%. Does that make sense? That's what this calculation is that last piece of these problems.
I guess another question. So the percentage of equity financing, is that for the project you're looking at, or is that for the company as a whole? And what if you're changing the way it's financed based on the new project?
Okay, this is the percentage of equity financing for the company as a whole, and we're presuming the project has the equivalent amount of equity financing. That's not always true. So take the next finance class, and we'll show you what happens if the company's capital structure is changing, how you modify these formulas. And you're exactly right. This presumes that we're going to finance the project equivalently to our company. That doesn't always happen. And sometimes you have a cost of capital that shifts over time depending on what the capital structure is. But great question. What other questions do you have about how we did this calculation, or what it means? The next time we're together, we're going to do that massive problem. We're going to do a big problem where we're going to do all of the cash flows and all of the calculations start to finish to get a sense for how we put all of this stuff together. But we got a lot of other things to do next time. So I want to show you, I want to give you a sense for a little bit of where we're going next week. All right. So when we come into class next time, we're going to do our review of the week, and then we're immediately going to move into Euroland, and you're going to like Euroland. So your Euroland projects are due to me by whatever the standard time is, noon, I think, on next Wednesday. So do your 2 to 3 page analysis where you you tell me what projects you would undertake. Think about finance, but think strategy as well. And then you're going to come in and I'm going to put you in your boards and you're going to go spend 40 minutes discussing which project you're going to undertake. And then you're going to come back and debrief with us. Tell us which projects you accepted and why, and talk a little bit about the process your board went through. Then we're going to move into some databases. So we're a little bit ahead right now. I'm just so thrilled to be able to say that. I never am able to say that. But we're not going to move on much beyond where we are for a couple of weeks now. I want to talk a little bit about this weighted average cost of capital assignment. This is the project that's due in a couple of weeks. And what you're going to do is a voice thread. You're going to tell me how your company calculates its cost of capital. And your company may come in here and you may find that they do it exactly according to the book. And here, if you're able to meet with somebody within your treasury department, here are basically the questions you ask them. How do you go about calculating it? And then I want you to create a PowerPoint and do a voice thread presentation. If your company, if you can find a CFO or a treasurer, somebody in the treasury department that can answer these questions, great. What you may find is that they do everything exactly by the book. Out of 20 in the class, I'd be surprised if one does that. Because this is theory, and companies have modified theory. Some of you might not use CAPM at all. You might not even calculate a cost of capital in any way similar to what we do. And that's okay. Then you're doing this. If your firm doesn't calculate WACC, that's there. Then you say, okay, so how do we decide how to undertake a project? What's our process? And your voice thread will be all about your company's process. What I want you to do, though, if your process is very different than cost of capital, I want you then to tell me, how should they calculate it? Do you agree with their method? And you may think, gosh, this is so far superior from weighted average cost of capital, and we should teach how to do it this way. Or you may think that they could improve their process, and I want you to describe that. So it's perfectly fine if your company doesn't use a cost of capital analysis like we see in Chapter 13, but then your voice thread becomes a description of it. For some of you, you work in regulated industries or you work in defense and companies are not willing to have those conversations with you. A third option is to go out and find a publicly traded company and do an analysis on a publicly traded company. Next week, whether your company is publicly traded and you're doing the analysis or you're going with a separate publicly traded company, I'm going to show you how to use Bloomberg and Capital IQ to gain some data, because if you go down in this project description, you may be going, what in the world? She's talking about Bloomberg and Capital IQ and where to get the data and all this stuff. I'm going to show you how to do that next time, so that's going to take a good bit of our time as well next week. Presuming we have additional time, the other thing I presume you've already read Chapter 13. The only other thing that you need to do to be completely ready for next week is to read these 2 articles. One is by Bruner, and Bruner wrote that article, well, it's probably 20 years ago now, but he was just so enthused that companies were finally starting to calculate something like a cost of capital. And so he did a study of CEOs or CFOs, I think, to find out how they calculated cost of capital. And it's a really nice review of Chapter 13. So it's a good read from that perspective. The problem is CAPM doesn't work very well. It's theoretically sound, but operationally weak. And so these Fama and French were 2 other researchers who came up with an alternative way to do the analysis. Fama French paper is dense, but you're going to have a tough time with the discussion if you haven't at least tried to get through Fama French. So go through and mark it up. Where do you have questions? Both of these articles are on our Moodle page, so pull them down, read them, and mark it up with questions you have, and we'll have time to discuss those next time. So we're going to do review of the week. We're going to do our Euroland case and analysis. We're going to answer any questions you have about the weighted average cost of capital assignment. I'm going to make sure I show you Bloomberg and Capital IQ. And then if we have time for these articles, we'll read them, we'll go over them. If not, we'll push that out another week, and we will get to them before your weighted average cost of capital analysis is due. But my bigger issues are to answer any questions about the project and to make sure we have time to show you the databases too. Now, keep in mind, if you have any questions or your company says, oh, they're not willing to do this unless I sign a non-disclosure. I sign non-disclosures all the time. I'm the only one who's going to see it. You'll now understand why I had you do a voice thread at the beginning of the semester. You already have some familiarity, so it makes it a little bit easier when it comes time to do this project. You've done it at least once before, so it's a little bit easier. Okay. What questions do you have about next week or this cost of capital analysis project?
Did you already send out our roles for Euroland?
I did. You should have gotten your role. Has everybody gotten it?
I did not get anything.
Okay, who is that?
This is Brian Shear.
Brian? Okay, I'll look tonight. Raise your hand if you got your role. Somebody else had trouble reading it. Okay, good. Okay, so as long as most of you got it. Brian, I'll as soon as we finish, I'll go in and look and see what your role was, and I'll make sure I resend it to you. Good. Okay.
Actually, I didn't see mine either.
Matt, you didn't either? Okay. Okay. I'll look as well. Anybody else not see their role? Okay, I'll send those two right away. And if anybody else is missing their role, just let me know. So the project that is due, the Euroland analysis that you write, is strictly you as an MBA student. What projects would you select? When you come to class, you're in role of whoever you are, whether you're Wilhelmina or Marco, and you're going to be pushing for the projects that your character is recommending.
Professor,
Yes.
So just so I'm clear, we can, on maybe even both, we can pick multiple projects, or should we?
Should. Yeah, you should.
Okay, it's
So-
not just one.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, you want to spend your budget. And so
Okay.
you could say, well, I only think 2 projects and we shouldn't go with any of the others. Or these are the 4 projects we're going to do. Or, you may figure out a way to do 6 projects. So identify all of the projects that you think this company should pursue and why. And then for your character, let's say you're Marco, and Marco wants to do these 3 projects. It's okay if you support a 4th project that somebody else wants that isn't counter to what Marco wants. That's perfectly fine too. Okay, because on the board, you need to figure out what's best for the company overall, and that may not always be what's best for your character individually. Any other questions? I think we officially did it.